It started with an invitation. An extravagant one. A handwritten letter, pressed in gold foil, addressed to me and my wife, inviting us to an exclusive getaway on a private island in the Caribbean. The sender? Michael and Julia Carter, old friends of ours. Friends we had known for over a decade. Michael and Julia had always been the adventurous type, the kind of people who thrived on wealth and exclusivity. We hadn't seen much in recent years, but that wasn't unusual. People drift apart, life gets in the way. Still, the invitation was surprising. "We finally purchased our dream island," the letter read, "and we would love for you both to come and celebrate with us. It will be a small gathering of close friends. We promise an unforgettable experience." A private island. The very idea was seductive. Who wouldn't want to escape the monotony of everyday life and indulge in a week of paradise? The thought of pristine beaches, endless cocktails, and laughter with old friends was more than enough to make us accept without hesitation. We weren't the only ones. As we stepped off the private yacht that had ferried us to the island, we were greeted by a tall, expressionless man in a crisp black suit. He introduced himself as Victor, the Carters' butler. His voice was polite, but devoid of warmth. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter are unfortunately delayed," he informed us. "They will join you all for dinner this evening." We exchanged glances. All? That was when we noticed the others. 3 other couples, all of whom we recognized, some from past vacations, others from old gatherings. Friends of the Carters, friends of ours, in some capacity. Each of them wore the same expression of curiosity and mild confusion. We were led to our room slavish, spacious, and with breathtaking views of the ocean. The island was, without a doubt, a paradise, but something about it felt off. Perhaps it was the silence, or the butler's unnerving composure, or the fact that, despite the beauty of our surroundings, there was a lingering sense of unease settling deep within me, like a shadow that had yet to reveal itself. We didn't know it then, but the island was not meant for celebration. It was meant for judgment. And by the time the sun set, we would all understand why. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting streaks of deep orange and crimson across the sky, we all gathered in the grand dining hall. The room was breathtaking high ceilings with wooden beams, a long mahogany table set with silverware so polished it reflected the flickering candlelight like tiny stars. Despite the luxury, there was an eerie tension in the air. The absence of our hosts was unsettling. Michael and Julia had invited us here, yet they were nowhere to be seen. Victor, the butler, moved with precise efficiency, ensuring everyone had wine, that each plate was perfectly arranged, and that the room itself seemed flawless. But he said little, and his presence only heightened the unease. I glanced around at the other guests. David and Lisa Reynolds, business partners of Michael's, always flashing their wealth. Sam and Rachel Porter, childhood friends of Julia's, though we never knew them well. Ethan and Vanessa Malera, quiet couple, seemingly more observant than talkative. And then there was us, James, and Emily West. We tried making small talk, but it was awkward, forced. There was an unspoken question on everyone's mind. Where the hell are Michael and Julia? The grandfather clock in the corner chimed exactly at 8. As if on cue, Victor stepped forward and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "Mr. and Mrs. Carter would like to address you now." Before anyone could respond, the lights dimmed, and a large screen on the far end of the room flickered to life. A video call connected. There they were, Michael and Julia Carter, sitting in an unfamiliar room, both dressed in white, their faces unreadable. Julia's lips were pursed tightly, her hands clasped together on the table in front of her. Michael leaned forward, his piercing blue eyes scanning us through the screen. "Good evening, friends," he said, his voice calm but hollow. The room fell silent. "We are so grateful you could all make it," Julia continued, her tone unnervingly neutral. "Unfortunately, we couldn't be there in person," Michael added, "but we needed to gather you all together, because tonight you must uncover the truth." A chill ran down my spine. "The truth about what?" Ethan asked, his voice cautious. Michael sighed. "About our daughter, about what really happened to her." The air grew thick with tension. Their daughter, Sophia. She had died 5 years ago. A tragic accident, or so we had all believed. No one spoke of it much. It was too painful, too raw. And yet, here we were, suddenly being forced to confront it. "I know this must be confusing," Julia said, her eyes glistening with something unreadable. "But one of you is responsible." The words hit like a gunshot. A wave of shock rippled through the table. Someone scoffed in disbelief. Someone whispered, "This must be a joke." But Michael wasn't smiling. "You were all there 5 years ago," he continued. "That night when we lost Sophia, and whether you knew it or not, one of you played a part in her death." Silence. "I suggest you start talking," Julia said, her voice cold, "because until you figure out who it was, no one is leaving this island." The screen went black, and the doors locked. The room fell into stunned silence. The air was heavy, suffocating. The only sound was the faint clinking of silverware as someone shifted uncomfortably in their seat. I could feel my wife Emily tense beside me. Then someone laughed, a short, nervous chuckle. "You've got to be kidding me," David Reynolds said, shaking his head. "This is a prank, right? Some twisted mind game?" No one answered. I turned to look at the butler, Victor, who stood motionless at the side of the room. His expression hadn't changed. He simply watched us, impassive, as if observing a play he had seen 100 times before. I swallowed hard. "Michael, Julia, if you're still listening, this isn't funny. If this is some kind of test, we're done playing." Silence. The screen remained black. Vanessa Miller was the first to panic. "Wait, what did they mean by, 'No one is leaving'? What the hell does that mean?" As if in response, a deep metallic clunk echoed through the hall. It came from the heavy wooden doors behind us, the only exit from the dining room. Ethan Miller sprang up and rushed to them, grasping the ornate brass handles. He twisted, pulled, pushed. Nothing. "They're locked," Ethan muttered, his voice uneven. Rachel Porter stood up, clutching her wine glass. "Okay, this is insane. This has to be some elaborate escape room, right?" She turned to Victor, the butler. "Open the doors." Victor merely folded his hands in front of him. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, ma'am." Lisa Reynolds exhaled sharply. "Are you serious? What the hell is going on?" Victor tilted his head ever so slightly. "I was given strict instructions. You are to remain here until you uncover the truth." The weight of the words settled over us like a death shroud. Number Sam Porter spoke for the first time. "No, no, no. This is wrong. This is kidnapping. I don't know what kind of sick joke Michael and Julia think they're playing, but we're not part of this." David ran a hand through his hair. "If this is about Sophia, then they're insane. She died in a goddamn accident." "Was it?" Vanessa muttered under her breath. Heads snapped in her direction. "What do you mean, was it?" Lisa demanded. Vanessa hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." No. We're all stuck here because of something. So if you know something, Vanessa, now's the time to say it," Rachel snapped. "Don't you dare turn this on me," Vanessa shot back. Ethan, still gripping the door handles, spoke without turning around. "We all knew Sophia. We all were there that night. Maybe it wasn't an accident." His voice was quiet, but the words hit like a slap. The room turned to stone. Emily reached for my hand under the table, and her grip was ice cold. I could feel my own pulse in my throat. Because suddenly, I was thinking back to that night. 5 years ago. The night Sophia died. And I realized I had never actually questioned how it happened. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The weight of Ethan's words pressed down on all of us, suffocating, unbearable. Maybe it wasn't an accident. I felt Emily's grip tighten around my fingers. She was trembling, but her face remained unreadable. My own thoughts spun into a spiral. What did I remember about that night? 5 years ago, we had all been together. A gathering just like this. A party, a celebration, and then Sophia was gone. Drowned, they had said. An accident near the cliffs. But why had we never questioned it? Rachel Porter was the first to speak. "This is ridiculous. Sophia drowned. There was an investigation. No one was found responsible. We all know that." Vanessa Miller scoffed. "Do we? Because I don't remember any of us actually being asked real questions about it. I don't remember anyone sitting down with the police for more than a few minutes." Lisa Reynolds crossed her arms. "Oh, and you think one of us did something? Is that it?" Ethan, still standing by the locked doors, exhaled sharply. "Michael and Julia do." The room went silent again. Sam Porter pushed back from the table. "This is insane. If they think one of us is guilty, they should have gone to the police, not trapped us on their stupid island like a bunch of rats." Victor, the butler, remained still, watching, silent. I licked my lips, my throat suddenly dry. "We need to stay calm." Sam let out a short, bitter laugh. "Stay calm? We were just accused of murder. What part of this is calm?" Ethan turned to him. "I don't like this any more than you do, but Michael and Julia aren't playing around. They want us to figure it out. They think one of us killed their daughter." Vanessa shook her head. "This is ridiculous. How could they even be sure?" David, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "Maybe they have evidence." The room froze. The word evidence lingered in the air like a foul stench. My mind reeled. Evidence? Was that possible? 5 years had passed. The case had been closed. If Michael and Julia had found something, why hadn't they gone to the authorities? Unless they didn't want justice. Unless they wanted revenge. The room suddenly felt smaller, hotter. Rachel's voice cut through the silence, her eyes darting between us. "Let's stop talking in circles. If they think one of us did it, then we should figure out what really happened." Lisa scoffed. "So what? You want to play detective?" Rachel ignored her. She turned to me. "James, do you remember anything strange from that night?" I swallowed hard. Everyone's eyes were on me now. I did remember something. A moment. A flash of something I had buried deep. That night, 5 years ago, the sound of raised voices near the cliffs, a scream, a splash, and then silence. But the worst part, I couldn't remember who was screaming. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could answer, the lights in the dining hall flickered, and then they went out. The room was plunged into complete darkness. And somewhere in the pitch black, a voice whispered, "You're running out of time." A sharp gasp cut through the darkness. Someone knocked over a chair, the screech of wood against tile setting my teeth on edge. "Who said that?" Vanessa's voice was sharp, panicked. No answer. Emily's grip on my wrist was crushing. I reached into my pocket, fumbling for my phone, but my fingers felt clumsy, numb. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Then, sudden a flicker of light. A dim glow illuminated the table as Rachel Porter managed to turn on her phone's flashlight. The beam trembled slightly in her hands as she swept it across the room. Faces appeared out of the darkness-wide eyes, pale expressions. Fear was sinking in. David ran a hand through his hair, exhaling shakily. "This isn't funny. Someone turn the damn lights back on." "I don't think we can," Ethan muttered. "That blackout wasn't an accident." Rachel's light continued moving around the room until it landed on Victor. He stood perfectly still near the dining room doors, his face eerily calm. The shadows warped his features, making him look almost unreal. "Victor?" Lisa asked, voice uncertain. "Do you know what's going on?" His lips parted slightly, as if he were considering his response. Then, finally, "The Carters told me to give you time," he said, "but time is running out." A chill slid down my spine. The whisper we had heard in the dark had that been him, or someone else. Ethan stepped forward, opened the doors. Victor blinked at him, his expression unreadable. "You will not leave until the truth is revealed." "You're insane," Sam snapped. "You think we're just going to sit here, waiting to be picked off one by one?" Victor's gaze did not waver. "I suggest you remember, Mr. Porter," he said in a slow, deliberate tone, "that justice is inevitable." Rachel sucked in a breath. "Justice?" she repeated. "What the hell does that mean?" Victor turned his head slightly. "Someone here is guilty." His eyes drifted across the room, pausing just for a fraction of a second on each of us. And then he stepped backward into the shadows. Rachel swung her flashlight toward him. Buth was gone. Vanessa let out a string of curses. "I'm done. I'm not sitting here waiting for the Carters to turn this into some sick horror movie." She turned toward the dining hall's large bay windows and grabbed the handle, trying to shove them open, but they didn't budge. Ethan ran to help her, yanking at the frame. "They're locked." "No shit, they're locked," Vanessa snapped, slamming her fist against the glass. "But if they won't let us out the front door, we'll find another way." I swallowed hard, turning to Emily. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but her face was pale. "James, what if they're right?" I stared at her. "What?" She bit her lip. "What if one of us did do something to Sophia? What if we don't even realize it?" My stomach turned to ice. What if she was right? Memories from that night felt distant, blurred, but something was there. Something I wasn't seeing. A piece of the puzzle. Just out of reach. And then, a loud bang echoed from somewhere inside the mansion. We all froze. A second bang, closer. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. What the hell was that? No one moved. Then, the phone screen in the center of the dining table flickered back to life. Michael and Julia's faces appeared. Michael's expression was unreadable, but Julia's eyes burned with something I couldn't quite place. She leaned forward, her voice cold as ice. "You are running out of time." Michael's words rang in the silence, heavy and inescapable. "You are running out of time." A crackling sound followed, and then Julia leaned forward. Her face was paler than before, her lips pressing together. "If you refuse to uncover the truth," she said softly, "we will help you." The screen flickered static flashstand, and then an image appeared. A video feed. It was a live security camera, and what it showed made my blood run cold. A dimly lit hallway. Victor, the butler, standing completely still. At his feet, a body. Someone was lying on the floor, unmoving. For a second, no one breathed. Then, "Who is that?" Vanessa whispered, stepping closer. I didn't want to move, didn't want to lean in and see, but I did, and my heart stopped. It was Sam. He was sprawled across the hallway floor, his limbs bent at unnatural angles, his eyes wide open, staring blankly. "No," Rachel gasped. "No, no, no." "Jesus Christ," Ethan muttered. Emily covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Victor, still standing in the video feed, tilted his head slightly, watching, waiting. "This isn't real," Lisa choked out. This is a trick." Michael's voice returned, sharp and emotionless. Sam refused to cooperate. He tried to escape. A beat of silence. Now he's dead. Rachel let out a strangled sob, stumbling back. "This is murder," David hissed, his hands balled into fists, his breath coming out in short bursts. "You can't just kill people, Michael." Julia's voice was eerily calm. "We didn't kill him. The island did." Vanessa's face twisted. "That's bullshit." The screen flickered again, the live feed vanished, replaced by Michael and Julia's faces once more. Michael exhaled, leaning forward. "How many more need to die before you take this seriously?" A low beep sounded, and then the call disconnected. The screen went black. Silence. Rachel let out a slow, shaky breath. "We need to get out of here, now." Ethan turned back to the window, banging his fist against the glass. "If the doors are locked, we find another way." David was pacing now, running both hands through his hair. Sam's dead. Dead. He stopped suddenly, eyes darting to the rest of us. What if this isn't about justice? What if Michael and Julia don't actually care who killed Sophia? What if they just want us all dead? A horrible thought settled into my mind. Michael had said one of us was guilty, but what if this was never about finding the truth? What if it was about punishment? And what if they thought we all deserved it? I looked at Emily. She was pale, gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I reached for her hand. "We have to stick together." Rachel sniffled, wiping her eyes. Sam didn't deserve that. Ethan turned away from the window, his jaw clenched. "No one else is dying. We end this." Vanessa exhaled sharply. "And how the hell do we do that?" David's voice was low, almost a growl. "We find out who killed Sophia." We all looked at each other. Because somewhere in this room, one of us knew the answer. And we had no idea who would die next. The room was filled with the sound of ragged breathing. Sam's death wasn't just a warning, it was proof. Michael and Julia weren't bluffing. Someone else would be next. Ethan clenched his fists. If we're going to figure this out, we need to start from the beginning. What do we actually remember from the night Sophia died? Silence. A shadow of doubt crept through the room. Because the truth was none of us had really thought about it before. We had accepted the version of events we were told. We believed it was an accident. But now we had no choice but to dig. Lisa let out a slow breath. We were all at the Carter's estate that night, right? Yeah, Rachel confirmed. A party. A celebration of some kind. David nodded. Michael had just closed some big business deal. There were drinks, music. I exhaled sharply. And Sophia? Vanessa swallowed hard. She was just a kid. 11, maybe 12. Barely 11, Emily whispered beside me. She was always so bright, so curious. I could still picture her, the small girl with big green eyes, always trailing behind Julia like a shadow. And then, Ethan hesitated. What do we actually know about how she died? The words sat heavy in the air. She drowned, Lisa said, near the cliffs. Or she was pushed, David murmured. The thought sent an icy blade down my spine. Rachel inhaled sharply. Michael and Julia must have found something. That's why they gathered us here. Ethan's jaw tightened, which means someone here knows more than they're saying. No one spoke. Then, a loud crash echoed from down the hall. We all froze. Vanessa cursed under her breath. What the hell was that? Ethan was already moving. We need to get out of this room. Staying in one place is making us easy targets. I looked at Emily. Stay close to me. She nodded quickly. David hesitated before stepping toward the doors. They're still locked. Ethan exhaled sharply. Then we find another way out. Rachel turned toward Victor's empty seat. The butler disappeared. That means there's another way out of this room. We started searching, pulling at the bookshelves, checking under the long table. Then, click. A hidden panel in the wall shifted slightly as Lisa pressed her palm against it. We all turned. You've got to be kidding me, Vanessa muttered. David didn't hesitate to push the panel open, revealing a narrow passageway. A dark tunnel leading deeper into the mansion. No lights, no sound, just blackness. I swallowed hard. We don't know where it leads. Ethan clenched his jaw. Better than waiting here to die. One by one, we stepped inside. The air was damp, cold. The walls felt rough, made of uneven stone. We moved slowly, the only light coming from our phone screens. Thena noise, a sharp scraping sound. Somewhere ahead of us. Rachel sucked in a breath. Is someone? Then, from the darkness, a whisper. Turn back. I felt Emily's hand squeeze mine, her fingers ice cold. And that's when we saw it. A shadow moving at the end of the tunnel. Waiting. Watching. And then it started running toward us. The shadow charged toward us. A dark figure moving fast, too fast, through the narrow tunnel. The air felt like it had been sucked out of my lungs, my pulse hammering against my skull. Run, Ethan shouted. We scattered. Emily's grip on my wrist tightened as we bolted down the passage, the cold stone walls pressing in around us. Our footsteps echoed, mixed with the erratic panting of panic. Behind us, a guttural breath. Heavy, inhuman. Rachel stumbled, nearly falling, but Vanessa yanked her forward. Don't stop, she gasped. The tunnel twisted, leading into deeper darkness. My brain screamed at me to stop to look at whatever was behind us, but survival instincts kept me moving. Thena, dead end. David skidded to a halt, slamming his fists against the stone wall. Shit, we're trapped. The shadow was closing in. I could hear it, feel it. A presence that wasn't natural, that didn't belong. Ethan grabbed the nearest thing and old, rusted metal pipe leaning against the wall and turned, breathing heavily. We make a stand. Rachel whimpered, pressing against the wall. Against what? Before anyone could answer, the figure emerged into the dim glow of our phone lights, and I saw its face, or rather lack of one. A smooth expanse of pale flesh, no eyes, no mouth, just a featureless void where a human face should be. It tilted its head as if studying us before lunging forward. Ethan swung the pipe. A sickening crack echoed through the tunnel as the metal struck the figure's shoulder. It staggered, but it didn't stop. It didn't bleed. It reached out long, clawed fingers grasping. Emily screamed. Then a mechanical hiss. A door behind us slid open. The stone wall was fake, a hidden entrance. Without thinking, I grabbed Emily and shoved her through. Go, go! We tumbled into a small, candlelit chamber. The air smelled of damp wood and something rotting. David and Lisa stumbled in after us. Then Vanessa, Rachel, and Ethan, who turned and slammed the hidden door shut, breathing hard. For a moment's silence, then thud. The thing on the other side slammed into the door. Once, twice, then nothing. Only our gasping breaths filled the space. What the fuck was that? Vanessa whispered, clutching her chest. No one had an answer. The chamber we had fallen into was wrong. The walls were lined with photographs. Hundreds of them. Black and white, aged with time. And in every single one was Sophia. She stood in different places: the Carter's mansion, the cliffs, the garden, her young face frozen in time. But the more I looked, the worse it got. Because the last few photos, Sophia wasn't alone. In the shadows behind her, barely visible at first, was the faceless thing. Watching, waiting, getting closer. Rachel clamped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. This isn't about us. Lisa's voice was a trembling whisper. Then what the hell is it about? I took a step closer to the wall, my stomach twisting in knots. Among the photographs was something new. A fresh Polaroid. Someone had taken it recently. And in it was all of us, sitting at the dinner table tonight. The photo had been placed here before we even arrived. A chill ran down my spine. Michael and Julia. They had planned this. And whatever was hunting us had been waiting. A thick, suffocating silence filled the chamber. The Polaroid of us from tonight was pinned to the wall, nestled among hundreds of old, faded photos of Sophia. My hands trembled as I reached for it, as if touching it would somehow confirm the nightmare we were trapped in was real. Vanessa exhaled sharply. This isn't possible. Rachel shook her head, stepping back. That thing, whatever it is, it's been here before. It was with Sophia. Lisa clutched her arms around herself. Then what the hell happened to her? Because if it wasn't an accident, if Michael and Julia know something we don't, then what the fuck are we doing here? Ethan, his face pale but determined, stepped closer to the wall. This isn't just about finding out who was responsible. It's a ritual. David scoffed. Oh, come on. Ethan turned to him, eyes burning. Look at these photos. Look at the timeline. Something was with Sophia before she died, and now it's with us. A cold wave of realization settled over me. My mouth was dry as I spoke. You're saying this isn't about revenge. It's about... I struggled to find the words. A sacrifice. Emily shuddered beside me. Michael and Julia don't just want justice. They want to finish something. A low, electronic beep sounded. We all turned toward the far end of the chamber. A television screen flickered to life. The grainy security footage from before reappeared, but now the camera was focused on the cliffs. My stomach turned to ice. I knew this place. It was where Sophia had died. The camera feed was live, and standing there in the darkness was Victor. He was staring directly into the camera, his eyes empty, his posture unnaturally still. Then he turned his head. Slowly, unnervingly, as if he was looking at someone beside him. The camera panned. Another figure stood at the edge of the cliffs. Tall, slender, motionless. A figure without a face. A guttural scream tore through the speakers. Then the feed cut to black. Rachel clamped a hand over her mouth. Lisa took a step back, her face twisting in horror. What the fuck was that? Ethan's voice was cold, detached. That thing killed Sophia. Vanessa shook her head violently. No, this is bullshit. That's not real. I turned to Emily, my hands gripping her shoulders. Do you remember anything from that night? Something that didn't make sense? She hesitated. Her eyes darted back to the photographs, scanning them, searching for something. Then her breath hitched. Her fingers hovered over one of the older pictures. A photo of Sophia, the last photo ever taken of her. It showed her standing on the cliffs just like in the video. And next to her was one of us. The air left my lungs. The person standing beside Sophia, in the photo smiling, unaware of what was coming, was David. A thick, terrible silence settled over the room as we all stared at the photograph. David was standing next to Sophia. The realization hit like a gunshot. He had been with her the night she died. I turned to him slowly, my pulse hammering against my ribs. David, my voice was barely above a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? His face went pale, then flushed red. This is ridiculous, he snapped, stepping back. I don't remember that photo. It's fake. They're manipulating us. Vanessa's voice trembled. David, were you with Sophia that night? He hesitated. Too long. Ethan took a step forward. We don't have time for this, man. Michael and Julia are watching. That thing is out there. If you know something, you need to tell us. Now. David's chest rose and fell rapidly. He was trapped. He looked around the room, then at the black television screen, as if waiting for Michael and Julia to speak again. Then, finally, shoulders sagged. And he confessed. I didn't mean for it to happen. His voice was hoarse, shaking. I swear to God, I didn't. Lisa gasped. Oh my God. David swallowed hard. Sophia followed me that night. I was drunk. We all were. She wanted to be included, to be part of the group. She kept saying she was grown up enough. I told her to go back to the house, but she wouldn't listen. His hands trembled. Who dared her, he whispered. I dared her to go near the edge of the cliff. I thought it was harmless, just a game. She laughed. She said, I'm not scared. He sucked in a sharp breath. And then she slipped. The room was deathly quiet. Rachel shook her head, her hands covering her face. David, you let her fall. His voice cracked. I climbed down. I tried to get to her, but she wasn't moving, and I was scared. He turned to me, desperate. James, you have to believe me. I wanted to help, but she was already gone. I panicked. I ran back to the party and acted like I didn't know. Emily's breath was uneven. You let her die alone. I thought if I said anything, everyone would blame me." Ethan's fists clenched. "Because it was your fault." David staggered back. No, this wasn't just me. We were all drinking. We all let a little girl run around unsupervised. It could have been anyone. "No," I said. "It was you." The lights flickered. And suddenly, the screen came back to life. Michael and Julia were smiling. "You finally understand," Julia whispered. David turned toward the screen, his face a mask of horror. "Please, Michael, Julia, you know me. I never meant." Michael's voice was calm, steady, deadly. "But you did it." David's lips trembled. "Please." The camera feed shifted again back to the cliffs, and something was standing there. A figure, tall, faceless, waiting. "David Reynolds," Julia said. "The island has decided." The air grew heavy. David's breath came in short, panicked gasps. "Number, no, you can't." The hidden door behind us swung open. The tunnel was empty, but something was coming. The air turned ice cold. Then the lights exploded. David screamed. In the chaos, I grabbed Emily, shielding her. I saw shadows move something, dragging David backward. His screams faded. By the time the emergency lights flickered on, he was gone. Only silence remained. The screen flickered one last time. Michael and Julia looked at us, their faces peaceful. "The truth has been revealed," Julia whispered. Michael gave a small nod. "You may leave now." And with that, the doors unlocked. Vanessa sobbed. Rachel pressed a hand over her mouth. Lisa was frozen, unmoving. Ethan turned to me, his face pale. "We're still alive." Emily's hand clutched mine. "Then let's go." And we did. We ran. We left the mansion, sprinting toward the docks where a single boat waited. As we climbed aboard, I turned for one last look at the island. And at the very top of the cliffs, where Sophia had died, a dark figure stood watching, waiting. The waves carried us away, the mansion fading into the mist. David was gone, but whatever lived on that island would never leave.